Hi, I'm Randy Hollenbeck, and this is the Music Roundtable. Today on the show, we have Kenzie Coyne from alternative rock band Hello Luna.
I know the face, but not the name, and I see the reaction, but not the blame. Yeah, it's alright, it's alright, 'cause I still got fight.
I wanted to dig into some of your history about how you got into music, what age.
Yeah, so I had kind of like a flimsy little start to music. I got into it later on. I mean, I had toyed around with it like when I was a kid, but I just never stuck with it. I played guitar in elementary school, and I remember like loving it, but it wasn't anything that stuck. I took the class, liked it, and then I just kind of dropped it. I didn't seriously start playing until like later high school years, and once I realized that I could play it with like play my instrument without having like formal classes, I was like totally hooked. And from there, I like really just I learned everything off of YouTube. That's actually I went to YouTube Academy. And I looked up music that I liked. I looked up people who did covers. And they just showed me the shapes and I imitated it and I loved how I could do it in my time and I didn't have somebody telling me how to play. And I mean, I don't have the most, an expert would probably look at the way I play and like facepalm, but like yeah, that's really where I got my start. I played a lot of open mics. I played a lot of cringy open mics when I got started, and I just did a lot of acoustic stuff. Folk and acoustic is really where I got my start, especially in Ohio. There's a big scene for that. And I was recording one of my solo albums, and then the session drummer who was there and I really hit it off musically. And then I was just gonna have him kind of be like a backing band to like my folky kind of music that I was creating. And once I found other members, one thing led to another, and we started creating something that was sonically so different. Which is where we created Hello Luna. That's where we got like the alt rock. I think we all wanted it to be like harder than it was. So we were all on board when things started to get bigger and the folk kind of got pushed to the side, and we were like, no, let's make this rock. And we did, and we never looked back.
When you were first starting out playing like the acoustic shows and stuff, what were like some of your musical influences as far as like bands and stuff like that?
Yeah, I had a very wide spectrum of like what I was listening to and what I liked. So I was really into the metalcore scene. That's mainly like the shows that I went to. That's what all my friends played in. I'm from Ohio, so there was like a huge bustling metal scene like happening. That's the shows I went to. The music I listened to Cold War Kids, Local Natives, a lot of the indie stuff. That's what I liked. Florence and the Machine was a big one. Um, as far as like songwriting goes, Alanis Morissette, Sarah McLachlan, the Cranberries, um, those were like huge inspirations as far as like songwriting style goes. Uh oh, my cat's coming up here. um, and then as far as like things that are less in that nature, I've always loved like Moby and just music that in like Radiohead music that kind of like takes you to a different type of place. And sorry, Josie, my cat wants to be in on this, but she's so sweet. She's the star. But yeah, I I've really I have a taste for all kinds of music. Um, and when I was developing the band, they were kind of all over their own spectrum. They were really into Blink, they were into Biffy Clyro, they were into Metallica, and the one thing that kind of gelled us all together is we all liked Radiohead. So I was like, okay, like we can, kind of find some common ground on that. Um, but I think part of what makes our sound unique is the fact that like there was no band that we were trying to hit on. There was no band that was like, "Oh my gosh, I just love, Paramore. Let's be like Paramore." It was like, no, like none of us had that like common band that we were like, oh, let's aim to be like this. Like we had like an array of music and like we just kind of found common ground. And I just like writing lyrics and they were incredible musicians. I really lucked out with the people that I found and started writing with.
When you were changing from acoustic into this band, you said you met your drummer. How did you meet the rest of the band?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. The drummer situation was awesome. That's a super cool story. The rest of the band's not so cool. I went on Facebook. I went to my local like 614 Ohio groups and I just posted like a very simple upfront thing that was like, here's the music I'm trying to create. I want dedicated members, people who are willing to travel, people who are willing to play shows. Here's kind of some of the bands I'm interested in. If you're into this, then reach out and let's get together and see what happens. So off of that, we tried out a few different bass players, a few different drummers, and I had a bunch of awkward auditions. And then we found our people. It's funny when you have auditions. It's like it's very much like pretty early on, like with these things, like when somebody walks in the room, you get a vibe. And like we probably had about like 10 or so before we found the rest of the members. And then once we did, it was like it just really gelled. We got a practice space. It was this little hole in the wall place called the Plastic Waffle. And it's like anybody in Columbus knows what it is. It's basically these like the walls are paper thin, so you'll have a metalcore band next to you, like screaming their heads off, and then you're over here playing like kind of soft music, like at a soft spot, and you're just getting like crushed with sound. It's the worst, but it's some of the only practice spots in Columbus. So yeah.
How did you come up with the band name?
So the band name, we went back and forth a lot. When I was younger, there's a spot by my house, and I live by a dam. And when you go up to the top, you're raised pretty high up. There's like a beautiful view of the water. And I used to go up there at night, and I would just look up at the stars, which is like kind of dumb, but like it meant a lot to me. I used to just put my earbuds in and listen to music and just think. And I just remember being up there for hours, like really late at night because it was open 24/7. No one was ever over there. I felt very safe. And I would just look up at the stars and it was so grounding at that time in my life. I was just like having these conversations in my head and I I would long for those times. Like I remember it would like get dark out and I'd be like, oh, I need to go there. And I just, I'd look back and I'm like, what was I doing? But I just remember having these like super intense conversations in my head and like just like looking up at the stars made me feel like anything was possible and that I was grounded. And the name Hello Luna really comes from like that that comforting presence of like the night sky. And I think everybody in their life like has that moment where it's just like they're going through it and they just look up and then you see the stars shining down at you. And as cheesy and dumb as that is, it's just this grounding place. I think that at that time in my life, like I really clung on to. It really developed me. It really like it helped me to kind of like move outside of the box I was being pushed into of like going to college and getting the degree and getting married and having the kids. I remember just looking up at the sky and being like, what else is out there? Like, that's what do I like, what is my purpose here, you know? And I used to have these really deep, conversations in my head. So Hello Luna was like, it's kind of a nod to that. And our whole if you want to call it a mission statement, like you would at like a job or something, our like line is like bringing light into the darkness. So that's what Hello Luna represents.
What city is your band based out of?
We are based in Columbus, Ohio.
When the pandemic hit and live music shut down for a year, what did you do during that time?
Yeah. So when that happened, similar story to everybody else. Tours got canceled, shows got canceled, everything went kaput. Um, So we had been sitting on a ton of music for a really long time. We have our own studio. Our drummer actually, we record everything with him inside of the studio, and the only thing we do is send off to master. So we decided we had just released Dear Demons, which is our second EP. We decided we were gonna do an acoustic thing just to kind of put out there, you know? And as we were recording the acoustic album, I just wasn't feeling it. The acoustic guitars, the pianos, I think it might have been the place I was at in my head, but I just couldn't stand it. And I was pretty angsty inside of the studio. Like they were playing and it was all pretty, and I was just like, stop. Like, no, like I don't want this. Like I want more of like a sonic experience. Like I want this to be like intense because what was happening in the world was so intense. It wasn't kumbaya. It wasn't like, oh, let's just put out an acoustic album, like so lighthearted. Like, no, like people are dying. Like the world is like, it was, that was during the protests. I mean, things were really getting flipped upside down. Like minds were opening. It was intense. And I was like, no, I cannot play kumbaya right now. So it was funny. We actually had a producer that just happened to be popping into our studio at that time. And he was like, hey, like, why don't you pull up like a synth pad? Let's start messing with that. And one thing led to another. We started messing with vocoders, and before we knew it, we decided we were going to reimagine the whole EP. And so we took our songs and we completely rethought them. Some of the songs are in different keys. Other parts have been like shifted and cut out. Some of the songs are the same exact vocal take from the Dear Demons EP, but we really felt it out, and it was such a journey. And if you go and listen to those songs, they're so different than like what Hello Luna does, but it was something I really needed because like during the pandemic, I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel like, grounded in my music. I wanted to like escape. And that's what the Reimagined album was. So we released that. We were lucky enough to book one of those cool drive-in shows. And then I also released a documentary about creating Dear Demons during that time. And we had a big projector up, and we like it was like a drive-in movie slash show, which was so awesome. We were really lucky to work with a brewery in town called North High Brewing Company, and they let us use their parking lot, and we made it happen. That was the only show that we did during the pandemic, and then we went back in the studio and we wrote Into Static, which is coming out the last Friday of this month, January.
Have you played any shows since they lifted?
Yes. So our first show back, we're part of a art community called Milo Arts, and we played in the parking lot of a gallery that we used to practice in. It's called 934 Gallery, and there's a stage outside because they do a festival every year. And I wanted everyone to feel safe, so I limited it to 50 people, and it was supposed to just be for our Patreons, and they're, you know, plus ones, but I ended up opening it up to 50 tickets. and it was really great. We had a local brewery come in, and we had a local artist come in, and there was like a few different like um, we had one other band play, and it was great. Everybody felt super safe. Everyone could distance if they wanted to. There was plenty of room. And then after that, I was taking a ton of solo gigs to kind of like recoup funds. And then I started playing my reimagined songs because a lot of what was happening, we have a bigger production company in Columbus called Promo West, and they needed opening acts, but they didn't want a lot of people. Like they didn't want my whole band because of COVID. They just want one person. They wanted to simplify because you want as least the least amount of people backstage and like as possible. So they were asking for solo stuff. Well, these bands would not make sense for me and my acoustic act. So I took my solo set and it was just me and backing tracks. So I did a couple of shows like that. They went over really well. And then we had the opportunity to play a few shows with k.flay. So we did that. And then we went we didn't go very far because touring right now it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we did Cleveland, Youngstown, just regional spaces. But that's pretty much it. We've done quite a few shows since the opening, but definitely doesn't look like it used to. That's for sure.
Now, when you played these shows, did you notice like kind of like energy or more the crowd more engaged?
The first few back, yeah, people like I know for myself, the first show that I saw after the pandemic, it was an outdoor show. Um, it was it was kind of like watching a show for the first time again. You know, you get that like feeling inside, and you're just so energized and excited and happy, and you like don't know why. Like, and I could tell that people were connecting to it kind of on that level of just being so deprived of like any sort of like community. And then all of a sudden you're like sitting there listening to music, like feeling connected to people that you're not even talking to. And, you know, it felt really good. And I definitely experienced people kind of having that like euphoric experience again. You know, you don't take it for granted. You don't take these shows for granted. Like you feel lucky to be out, and you know, especially when the vaccine came out. Like there was a time where like people for the first time in probably over a year were coming out. And we had some people who came up to us after our shows and were like, this is the first time we've been out since the pandemic. It's just like, oh my gosh. And it was heavy. Like people had lost parents, people had lost brothers and sisters. I mean, the conversations we were having after shows is like no joke. And it, you know, it really took on like a new role of like why I'm playing music. It's like it wasn't lighthearted. Like this was serious stuff. You know, what we're doing is like, you know, it it carries weight. And I wanted to like kind of fit into that role, you know? It's like not like, oh, lift up a drink, everyone, like let's have a good time. It's like, no, like we're fighting something here. Like we're trying to like come together and like be safe and like love on each other. So it was a very interesting experience for sure.
I wanted to dig into some of your songs here. Sound and Sorrow. It's really cool because it starts out with just the guitar playing, and then your voice comes in, and then they keep adding and building as the song goes to the chorus. Is that something you guys figured out and you decide to do that?
Yeah, so that was actually the first song we ever wrote as a band. And Sound and Sorrow originally was a very like sad acoustic ballad. And my old bass player, when he got a hold of the song, like he really wanted to build it. And I remember we had a whiteboard inside of our practice space, and he like was writing down ideas for the song. It was a 6 minute song, and he was like he wrote down all the parts like verse, chorus, bridge, and then he just started putting X's through things. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, we can't write a 6 minute song. Like, this is our first song, first of all. Like, it's never gonna work. And I was just like heartbroken. I was like, what do you mean? But like we talked as a band, we're like, let's just try it. So we started jamming it out a little bit. And I'm like playing this like acoustic riff, like you hear at the beginning, like that's just me. That was my solo project. That was the song. And then they were like, I hadn't written a chorus to it because I didn't really do that that much of my song. I'd write, 10 verses and be like, this is a song. Um, so that's why like the verse is like very lyrically intricate, and then you build because it's like that was the band writing on top of that. And one of the things we were writing out, like, what do we want to hear in our music? And I just remember something as simple as like, I just want it to build. I want it to get big. I want it to be like larger than life. And I remember him writing that on the whiteboard. He was like, big, let's make this big, let's make it larger than life. And so you have the song structured out, slashes through it, and a big, larger than life, and like that's what we created. And we really sat there and we toyed with it, and we constructed and destructed it, and like that's where we learned how to band was through that song. And I would really like to create more like that, where it's like the softer vocal and like it comes in hard. I would love to like create a song like that again. But there is something very magical about Sound and Sorrow in that sense. Yeah.
You have another song called Wait So Long, and you have a stripped down version on YouTube with acoustic guitar, bass, keyboards, and you singing, and it's really catchy and it really showcases your voice on that song. Was that something you set out to do?
So it's funny, the reason that we did the stripped down version was because I was doing a PSA for the Ohio Public Health. Um, and they did like a big festival. It had Jenny's from Jenny's Ice Cream, which is like a huge place. Like they have like national chains now, but she was doing a cooking demonstration. They had somebody doing like some exercising demonstration. It was all hands on deck trying to like create like a comforting like we're going to get through this together type of thing for COVID. And then they had us do a performance at the end, and it was all live streamed. So I was like, okay, well, obviously we need to do our newest single, which was Wait So Long at the time. And so we just did a stripped down session of it. And then I was like, hey, this is great. Like, let's rip that footage and let's put it on YouTube. And that's how it happened. Like it was actually performed for a festival. So like there's actually a part where I'm like talking about COVID at the beginning of it, but I just cut that out of it. And then we ended up just putting the stripped down version on YouTube.
That came out really well, your voice and everything in there.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Your newest song, Mind Games, you just released last week. Uh, I like how you use the phrasing in the verse with the words and stuff. How do you come up with something like that? Do you like hum out a melody on how you're gonna sing the words, or how does that work?
Yeah, so when I was writing Mind Games, I I was like messing around with my pedal board, which I usually don't do. I usually write everything on acoustic actually. And then we kind of build from there. But I was like, no, I want to get funky with some of these pedals. So I had this fuzz pedal, and this thing it simulates a sun amp, which there's any musicians that watch this, It's a loud amp. I think it's like the loudest amp. So this thing was like punching. And I just started doing this riff. And what I did is I just recorded it on my phone and I was like listening back to it. And then as far as the verse goes, it was like the lyrics just came. And so I just clunked along at that song all night. And like the lyrics in it are very quick, they're very fast, and that's how they came to me, you know. And there are times where I like kind of hum along and I'm like, I'll like think of a melody and then I'll put lyrics to it. Like I was just at the studio today with my solo project Kinney. That's what I was doing. Like he was showing me the beat, I was like humming along to it. I'll put it in my phone, I'll listen back to the melody, and then I'll write lyrics over top of it. Not with this. Like when I was like pumping out that like riff, I was like, they just came. And that song is really special to me because it's not always the way that music happens. Sometimes I really have to work at a song. I'm not one of those people that will like abandon ship if if I'm like if I'm working at something too hard. I know a lot of musicians will be like, if it comes to you, it comes to you. If it doesn't, move on. And like some of my best songs have been from like clunking along in the songwriting process. You know, like I'll put something in my notes for months and then I'll bring it back and I'll work through it. But this song in particular, there was something about it that it was just like it really downloaded. It just downloaded and I knew what to write. And you know, when I think about like what the song is about, like when I was writing it, I wasn't even like cognizant of that. It was just like the lyrics were just showing themselves to me. And that's a really spiritual and exciting experience because that's not how songwriting always is. So when you find the goose egg, when you find an experience like that, you really cherish it. It's like this holy moment and you're like invigorated and excited, and you don't always have that writing. Sometimes it's like you're really like pushing dirt around like you're just trying to like find footing. But there was something electric about this. There was something exciting, and like I was like searching and finding something. Like it was like an experience I'll never forget, like writing that song. Some of the songs you asked me about, I can't remember writing them. Like I don't even remember writing them. But this one, with the music video and everything, there's a lot of symbolism in the way the song was written inside of the music video. And it's really special to me. It means a lot.
What do you guys got planned for 2022?
2022, we obviously are going to release our album. It's our first full length album. There's going to be 9 songs, and we're going to be promoting it heavily, as well as we have a big show booked February 5th at a place in Columbus called A&R Bar. And it's the biggest room we've ever played as a headlining act. So we're hoping to sell that out. And we're very very excited about that. And then we are going to be working on creating content and continuing to write more music. We're holding off on touring right now because currently in the state it's in, I do all of my touring DIY. I book everything. I, you know, do all this stuff. So because restrictions and everything have been so crazy, it doesn't make sense for me to do anything outside of regional touring. So like of course I'm still gonna hit up Cleveland, Cincinnati, Kentucky, like everywhere around Ohio. But places that I don't have my connections like I do in those states that surround us, where I know I can, you know, bring a crowd and create, you know, good connections. It's like it just doesn't make sense for us right now. I would love, like, from this album to create more of a team, to find a booking agent, to potentially, like, find a manager who can help us find those, you know, keys to the kingdom, as they say. But as it goes currently, I think the smartest thing for us to do as a band is to stay focused on creating content, building our fan base, and creating more music.
How can we get a hold of you? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
Yeah, so I actually have a really cool landing page. If you go onto our Instagram, there's a little link. It's basically like a link tree, and that'll take you to everything. On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we're at Hello Luna Band. So all of our socials across the board are at Hello Luna Band. YouTube, you can find our music videos. You can find like what you were talking about, our stripped down sessions, our reimagined sessions. Those are just Hello Luna. You can just search that and we'll come right up. And then we have a website if you're interested in buying merch or anything like that. And it's just helloluna.band. But yeah, across the board, all socials, up TikTok as well at Hello Luna Band.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you for coming on the show today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I think we covered our bases. I really appreciate you having me on here. And to anybody watching, I appreciate it.